You're listening to the Truth for the Journey podcast with Jim Recene.
Well, hello again. Thank you for turning into another podcast. We've been in the book of Revelations, looking at some of the glory that is ahead for our lives. And we look at the beautiful things that are ahead for our lives. We say, we live here right now. Who's going to help us live right now? The world seems to be going upside down. We have very bad things going on in our government, things that most of us do not agree with. What do we do? Who's going to help us? It's nice that Jesus is coming back. That's really great, but what about now? I was thinking about these things, and the Lord gave me this verse, and I really didn't understand it. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19 says, and so we have the prophetic word confirmed. This comes out of Peter's experience, seeing the risen life. We'll turn to that in a minute. It is talking about the second coming of Christ, and we'll look at this tomorrow again, which you do well to heed as a light that shines in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your heart. Again, so we have the prophetic word confirmed, talking about the second coming, that Jesus says he's coming back. We'll look at this next podcast, which you do well to heed as a light that shines in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your heart. I just did the morning star rising in my heart. I could see the day dawning, Jesus coming. Oh, we'll be so excited. But what does it mean? So anyway, last night was Wednesday night for me, and they said, I'm going to show you that in church. So I thought, we'll see. So during praise and worship, while I was singing my worship to God, and God showed me what that scripture meant. I thought, boy, this is really exciting. And my son-in-law was speaking in church that night, teaching on a Wednesday night, and his sermon even helped me understand it. So I can't help but share it with you. What do we do in the meantime till Jesus comes? Well, in Matthew chapter 17, this is where this verse, the context of this verse comes from. Jesus was talking, and he looks at his disciples, and he says in Matthew 16, the last verse, verse 28, he says, surely I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Do you know that we belong to a kingdom? Yes, it's invisible. Yes, it's spiritual now. One day it will be literal. But it's a kingdom. Well, what does that do for us? Well, how's that going to help us live under oppression? How is that going to help us with bad conditions in the nation? How is that going to help me raise my kids? How's that going to help me provide for my family? How's that going to help me get through this or that? But you do belong to a kingdom, and there is a king. His name is King Jesus. Well, Matthew 17, verse 1 says, now after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, led them up on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. They saw him in his glorified state, as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. His face shone like the sun, his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. So it was Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, and Peter, James, and John are looking on, and they're scared, and just unbelievable. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. He's just talking nonsense here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and suddenly a voice came out of a cloud saying, this is the Father speaking now. This is my beloved Son. Now, this is twice now he speaks to disciples audibly on earth. This is my beloved Son, and whom I am well pleased. Hear him. God doesn't take a lot of words to fix and to help people. See, there really is a kingdom. All we have to do is just be quiet Stop running. Stop going crazy and just hear him. Get in a quiet place with our Bible, look up to heaven, say a prayer, but just go be with Jesus and listen to what he has to say. Listen to the wisdom that he has to give. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. But Jesus came and touched them and said, Arise, do not be afraid. And when they had lifted up their eyes, they saw none but Jesus only. Now they came down from the mountain. Jesus commanded them, saying, Tell this vision to no one, till the Son of Man is raised from the dead. Again, that verse that we're talking about. And so we have the prophetic word confirmed. Again, this is in the context of the second coming of Christ. We'll look at it next podcast, which you do well to heed as a light that shines in a dark place. We have a lot of dark places in our life, and we need a little bit of light. Well, Jesus wants to enter in. He wants to touch you so you're not afraid. He's the King. He really does reign. He reigns over our emotions. He reigns over our lives. Here are just some of those things. The morning star is going to rise in your heart. The morning star is Christ in scriptures. There's other scriptures that talk about it. When we're walking with God, when we're not trying to hide sin from him, the morning star is given to us, to the church. This is in Revelations, almost the last verse there in Revelations 2, Jesus talking to one of the churches. Moses, on the mountain, he saw God, and he saw God's glory. Moses, and it talks about this in Hebrews. Let me get it here. Hebrews, he saw God, and the day star started rising. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Remember, he was an adopted son into the ruling family in Egypt, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Moses, as a young man, knew God. And see, something happens when you know God. You can't sin anymore. Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. It's called heaven. If you think someone can offer you, the empire of that day could have offered him everything. It's nothing compared to what we have in the future. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, this is the important word, he endured as seeing him who was invisible. Moses saw God at the burning bush. He saw him on the mountain. And every day that he went, it's called the tent of meeting. He went into the tabernacle and he just spent time with God and heard God speak to his heart. And he led for 40 years a very rebellious people that didn't want God. And he taught a generation about God. And he raised up a whole lot of people, millions, by the way, of people to fear God. It took 40 years. It took a generation to do it. I mean, these people came out of Egypt, saw the 10 plagues, went through the miraculous thing of the Red Sea, and they still turned to idols. He taught the people God. Why would he want to drag all these complaining, ridiculous people through the wilderness? Why would he want to do that? You want to go serve the devil? Go serve the devil. That's what I would say. What made him endure with the mission of God? And he would go on from day to day because he saw the morning star. The morning star, King Jesus, kept him revived, encouraged, and able to do the job that he was called to do. There's so many of these things in scriptures. We've looked at Habakkuk before. Habakkuk was a prophet of God, and he saw what was going to happen to Judah, where they'd be besieged and surrounded, and they're all going to starve, and women were even going to eat their babies. And he was scared to death. But you see, he was with the King of Kings. He was with the kingdom, you see. And God encouraged his heart, and he says the most unbelievable thing in the world. After knowing as a prophet of God what is going to happen to his country, living in abject poverty, this is what he says: though the fig tree may not blossom, no fruit on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, and the fields yield no food, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. He's talking about no food and no money, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord is my strength. He belongs to a kingdom. Yes, he was looking at it, but he belonged to a kingdom where King Jesus would encourage him every day. King Jesus would keep him. Even if he would have to face great trouble, he says, he will make my feet like deer's feet. He will make me walk on high heels. In the midst of all that hell, you see, there's a kingdom, and the person over the kingdom is King Jesus. Now, when you get to 2 Peter, again, we'll look more fully into this next podcast. And so we have the prophetic word confirmed, which you do well to heed. As a light that shines in a dark place, Jesus is coming back until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your heart. You know, the morning star is literally going to come back to earth one day. Right now, he just comes to us. Right now, we just see him. And he rises up in our hearts, and he enables us to live this life and be victorious, and takes away fear and gives us courage to go on, because there is a king, King Jesus. Someone else saw Jesus back there in Matthew 17. Peter saw the glorified Christ. Before he would go to the cross, he saw the resurrected Christ on earth, but he saw Christ in all his glory too. He talks about it. He knew God, Peter. And this comes from 2 Peter. He already saw Paul be beheaded. And he already says in the book, it's time for me to die. He probably wrote it from prison to encourage the church. We'll look at it next podcast. But he's scared. He's going to give his life. He's going to be martyred. Paul was a Roman. He got beheaded. He was lucky. Peter is going to be crucified. Peter was so strengthened by the king in a time of suffering. He said, hey, you guys, he was in control. He was going to the cross to be nailed to a cross. And Peter says, oh, no. I'm not worthy to be nailed to a cross. You nail me to a cross, but I want to be nailed upside down. So they did. Tell me who was in charge, who had strength that day. Not the Roman Empire, but Peter did. There's a kingdom. And there's a king. And no matter what we have to face in the future, and no matter what you have to face in your life, if you'll be with the king, the morning star will rise in your heart, and you will find strength for living. You will be brave and you will be courageous. And he will help you. This was Peter in prison, just about to die. That was Paul in prison writing the Bible. People, we're in a kingdom. And King Jesus reigns. One day it'll be literally and everything's going to be good. But right now he just gives us strength to live supernatural every day. Go be with Jesus. Go be with the King and the day star. To go be with the King until the day star rises in your heart. Amen. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Truth for the Journey podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon to be notified when a new podcast is available.